Fools have been used for centuries. The word is obviously still used today and as more than an occupation. It's meant to describe someone stupid, or someone easily tricked. However, even though it's objectively a demeaning job, their position in a high court has led to fools being written about for centuries and a distinct picture of a court fool being creative. Bright, colorful, over-the-top garb is associated with fools and was meant to indicate a sense of rejuvenation that fools would generate. Their perception of stupidity is again contrasted with the fact that many court fools were dressed in expensive silks or furs, indicating that they may be more highly revered than once thought. In 1616, Nicholas Breton described natural fools as someone of abortive wit, where nature had more power than reason, treating them as if born for the role. Court fools were more than just employees, they were natural fools, and as a matter of fact, historians speculate that court fools may have been people with learning disabilities. For being servants of the king, fools were given a striking amount of freedom in the jokes they told, and some ended their lives as celebrities. Henry VIII's fool, William Somer, was recounted as having wise and quotable sayings. In Shakespeare's mind, this ambiguity in the hierarchy likely gave fools the confidence to make jabs at those in power, as their positions were not solidified to begin with. They had not as much to lose. By assuming fools were stupid, their critiques could be discounted. For example, Bishop Cuthbert Turnstall, writing to Thomas Cromwell in 1538, identifies an innocent natural fool whom by no means we could make to grant that he had spoken words of malice against the king. However, the notes of respect that history gives fools implies that maybe they should have been listened to all along. While flattery remains a problem for many of Shakespeare's kings, fools are one of the only figures who can undermine the authority of those in power and speak truth to the wrongs that might be occurring. Although their phrases are not respected, the importance of the fools cannot be understated, as they clue the reader into the truths about royalty that other characters in power may be scared to admit at the risk of losing their position. Shakespeare introduces a vast array of fools, some more subtle than others, that all function to speak truth to power and to those that hold on to power. Not only does the obviousness of their fool position vary, but so does how obvious their critiques of power are. Lucio, a character in Measure for Measure by Shakespeare, is not technically a fool. However, he is a perfect example of someone who functions just like one. Lucio asks Isabella for help in freeing her brother from jail, as he was arrested under new rule for getting a woman pregnant. He is labeled as a bachelor, as well as a fantastique in his cast listing. Again, although he is not presented as a fool, a fantastique in Shakespeare's time wore flamboyant clothes and has a wild imagination, just like a fool would. A disguised duke, trying to show the poor character of Angelo by having him have sex with a girl who he thinks is Isabella, is subject to the comments about royalty that Lucio makes. Who, not the duke? Yes, you're a beggar of 50, and his use was to put a ducat in her clack dish. The duke had crotchets in him. He would be drunk, too. That, let me inform you. Wise? No question, but he was. A very superficial, ignorant, unweighing fellow. I know him and I love him. No might nor greatness in mortality can censure scape. Back-wounding calumny and the whitest virtue strikes. What king so strong can tie the gallop in the slanderous tongue? To his face, Lucio accuses the Duke of both having sex with prostitutes out of wedlock and being a drunk. The editors of the New Kittredge edition even note that this scene is designed for maximum comic impact. There's a theory that Lucio actually did know it was the Duke and was working to humble him and reveal the rumors that were being said about him. Perhaps Lucio felt that while the Duke was temporarily out of his position and in the position of a friar, he had the right to say what common townspeople thought of the Duke. Or he could have been bothering him in order to prompt the Duke's return, as this question of law and order was much more prominent without him. Through comedy, Lucio is critiquing the conversion of the Duke into a friar. He slanders the Duke to his face as a result of leaving the kingdom and having people who should not usually be in trouble. He makes a series of comments like this throughout the play, functioning as a self-proclaimed thorn in the side of the Duke. He even says, "By my troth, I'll go with thee to the lane's end. If body talk offend you, will have very little of it. Nay, friar, I am a kind of burr, I shall stick." In his priestly position and in such a disguise, the Duke has no choice but to listen to this slander, admittedly throwing off the Duke and slandering his character. As a matter of fact, the Duke's frustrations would be made evident when his true identity is revealed at the end of the play, and the Duke states, "Thou art the first knave that ever madest a Duke." Working under the possibility that Lucio does know the Duke as Friar's true identity, his annoying of the Duke functions as a critique of the Duke's conversion. In Lucio's opinion, the Duke has left and abandoned the kingdom to the mercy of Lord Angelo, who has asserted much more law and order than the Duke ever did. Lucio is blatantly mean to the Duke Friar about the rumors that have spread about the Duke in his leave, and his intentions may well be to have him come back and defend himself. In this way, Lucio is a critique of conversion, the conversion of the true Duke into someone in disguise as a religious figure. When the Duke does return, he condemns Lucio for his direct slander. Instead of killing Lucio, he is forced to marry Kate Keepdown, a prostitute whom he had supposedly impregnated previously. "I beseech your highness, do not marry me to a whore. Your highness said, even now I made you a duke. Good my lord, do not recompense me in making me a cuckold." It is interesting that Shakespeare chooses to have Lucio reap the lasting negative consequences of the Duke leaving. His punishment reveals not only the danger of speaking the truth to people in power, but also leaves the reader to wonder that perhaps, if Lucio was employed as an actual court fool, maybe he could have gotten away with these jabs at the king. The conversion of the Duke is arguably immoral. He uses this guise to manipulate other people. This critique from Lucio is one of the only instances where the Duke is being critiqued for being absent, kind of a substitute for saying he should not be disguised as a Duke. Characters playing the role of a fool and a truth-teller would become even more obvious than the position that Lucio was in. Lancelot also, while not being employed as a fool, uses comedy to critique conversions as well. Lancelot begins as Shylock's servant and would progress to functioning more as a fool. During his first appearances, he's playing a trick on his own father, establishing comedic effect already. His first truth is him asking Bassanio to be his servant instead of Shylock's. Lancelot says, "You have the grace of God, and he hath enough." He critiques Shylock Judaism and the importance of the Christian religion above money. He believes Shylock to be devilish and immoral, and whether this be because of his religion or because he does not prioritize God is up for debate. Shakespeare quickly established that he's a fool when he opts to be Bassanio's servant. Instead of Bassanio giving him servant attire, Bassanio asks another servant to give him a livery more guarded than his fellows. This is another way of saying give him a standout outfit, possibly to be more like fools than other servants. He's also a blatant critic of Jessica's conversion after she marries Lorenzo and becomes Christian. Lancelot says, "Truly, the more to blame he. We were Christians the now before, e'en as many as could live well by one another. This making of Christians will raise the price of hogs. If we grow all to be pork eaters, we shall not shortly have a rasher on the coals for money." Saying that converting by marrying Lorenzo affects everyone else because now Jessica can eat pig, and this will increase the demand for pork and therefore the price of pigs. Not only is he being critical of the conversion, but he's saying that she's making her change in religion everyone else's problem. It's throwing off the religious balance between Christians and Jews. We were Christians now before, e'en as many as could well live one by another. Implies that there are already enough Christians, and this number is what allows people to work well together. Disagreement could arise as this number increases, and how she was raised also differs so much, and arguably she's not an authentic Christian. When Jessica tells Lorenzo about Lancelot's comments, Lancelot continues his blatant critiques. Lorenzo says, "Goodly lord, what a wit-snapper are you? Then bid them prepare dinner." "That is done too, sir. Only cover is the word." "Will you cover then, sir?" "Not so, sir, neither. I know my duty." Because cover is another way to say putting on a hat, which would be disrespectful to someone in power, it's saying this, Lancelot outwits Lorenzo into not doing work. He disrespects him by claiming to respect him so much that he has to openly disobey his instructions because this would disrespect him. It's again a way to critique the way Lorenzo has been carrying himself like Jessica. Lancelot would further insult Lorenzo by subtly alluding to needing to cover up the true nature of Lorenzo and Jessica's relationship. Go to thy fellows, bid them cover the table, serve in the meat, and we will come in for dinner. For the table, sir, it shall be served. It shall be served in. For the meat, sir, it shall be covered. For your coming in to dinner, sir, why, let it be as humorous, and conceits shall govern. Meat in Shakespeare times was also used to refer to sex. By switching around which is served versus which is covered, not only does Lancelot imply that the sexual nature of Lorenzo and Jessica's relationship is being covered up, but he uses in a similar way as before, which was the intent. He has the intent of disrespecting Lorenzo. His wit and cleverness allows Lancelot to get away with many blatant critiques, and although he's a servant to Shylock and then Bassanio, he functions like a fool. Also, for a man who converted to Bassanio's servant, maybe he is a fool for not acting on what he says and serving a man whom he's critiquing so much. Shakespeare would progress to using his fools to critique more than just conversions, but also still conversions in a way. The gravediggers, or the two clowns with pickaxes in the tragedy of Hamlet, condemn the logic of Danish royalty as they bury Ophelia, the Prince of Denmark's supposed love interest. At the gravedigger's introduction, the whole scene functions as comic relief after the death of Polonius and Hamlet's true battle with his desire or lack thereof for revenge. Act 5 begins with two gravediggers discussing the idea that Ophelia should not be receiving a Christian burial because she killed herself, and this is against the Christian religion. The first gravedigger says, "If this had not been a gentlewoman, she should have been buried out of Christian burial," communicating to the audience that the laws of the state and religion are not the same for all. He's also saying it's dumb for royalty to do this because it's just going to encourage people to kill themselves, thinking they can still get a Christian burial too. Ophelia will still not go to heaven. This is counterproductive because of the true nature of her death. They even make they riddle to each other about gallows makers. So the first gravedigger asks, "What is he that builds stronger than either the mason, the shipwright, or the carpenter?" The other says, "The gallows maker, for that frame outlives 1,000 tenants." When the first gravedigger asks again, because this gallows maker was not what he had in mind for his own answer, his correct answer is simply, "A grave maker, the houses he makes last till doomsday." In saying this, the first gravedigger shows awareness that his words and work will last beyond their lifetime. Because the gravedigger functions as, or both of them function as fools, they're essentially arguing that the position of a fool allows them to outlive others with their work, which arguably would be the witty comments that they make about the true nature of royalty. Even the dead jester, Yorick, communicates important ideas to Hamlet that shake him to his core. Hamlet takes the skull after the gravediggers carelessly throw it out of the grave. "Alas, poor Yorick," he says, "he hath borne me on his back 1,000 times, and now how abhorred in my imagination it is." To Horatio, he then commands him to "get you to my lady's chamber and tell her, let her paint an inch thick, to this favor she must come," implying that everyone dies eventually, and people deserve to know this like he does, that all people will turn to dust eventually, just like this skull. In a way, the gravediggers are critics of conversions as well. They joke and are frustrated about the conversion of Ophelia's death from a sinful one to a Christian one. Like the other fools that Shakespeare creates, the gravediggers seek to present a higher truth through their jokes and intelligence while simultaneously being undermined because of their position. Unlike before, these fools blatantly critique the actions of both Ophelia for killing herself and the actions of royalty for unsuccessfully and shamefully covering it up. They prove that their work will last a lifetime, and that part of their wisdom comes from knowing that everyone, royalty or not, will end up as bones in the ground just like Yorick. Finally, Shakespeare adds a prominent and important fool that is actually labeled as Lear's fool into the story of King Lear. This fool is blatantly critical of Lear's actions to his face, accusing him of being a fool and, just like himself, for giving away his power to his daughters who did not love him nearly as much as King Lear thought. Also, the fool is still a critic of conversion, He's critical of the fact that Lear turned himself into a fool with his own actions. For example, Lear accuses the fool of being bitter, and the fool responds, "Dost thou know the difference, my boy, between a bitter fool and a sweet fool? No, lad, teach me. That lord that counselled thee to give away thy land, come place him here by me. Do thou for him stand. The sweet and bitter fool will presently appear, the one in motley here, and the other found out there. Dost thou call me a fool, boy? All thy other titles thou hast given away, that thou wast born with." In saying this, the fool's accusing Lear of being a fool for giving away his land, and that there's no difference between himself and Lear. Shakespeare uses this spectrum of fools to illustrate the importance of truth-telling to people in power. Simultaneously, all critique the changing of one's natural self into another, whether it be the Duke in Measure for Measure disguising himself as a friar, or King Lear turning himself into a madman with no power. Because of the fool's history of being stupid and completely ignorant of their own actions, Shakespeare is able to have these characters be witty and critical towards people in power.